Hey guys, so a lot of people ask me about my personal presets and if they're available anywhere. I personally don't sell them. I also do not give them to anyone, but I would rather show you guys how to make your own. And so in this quick tutorial, I'm going to show you basically the settings that I use for this particular photo and what I do to create my preset. Hopefully this enables you guys to make your own. Enjoy. Okay, great. So we got a photo that starts like this. As you can see, I took it in RAW. Up here, it shows the original photo, how I took it, and everything like that. Um, Basically, this image is very flat, as you can tell. There's hardly any depth to it. It's very washed out, as it may seem. You can also see that there's a slight lens flare because the sun was in it, so it's naturally going to wash out a little bit more. So we're definitely going to have to start with this by upping the contrast. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to go in here, and already it's starting to bring the colors up, which is a good thing and a bad thing, depending on what you're going for. For me, I don't like color as much, so I'll probably keep it a little bit less saturated. For this, I really like the highlights. Bring those up a bunch. If you want, you can hold Alt Option on your keyboard, and you can see at what point in the photo stuff starts to blow out. So the more I bring up highlights, obviously the more it's going to blow out. As you can see, the greens in the top, and as I bring it down, there's going to be less. For me, I kind of like the brightness in this photo because it kind of shows the light that's leaking through. So I'm going to pull that up. I always bring up shadows. Doesn't matter what photo it is, I always bring up shadows, and you'll see why. Then here I come into blacks immediately after, and in order to get that real punch, we drop the blacks down. Drop it pretty much until black starts leaking in. See here, when I hold the option key and click the slider, basically it'll show at what point stuff starts to turn completely black. So if I went back here, oh, this is all very black, so I don't want to do that. Bring it just about when it's about to start, and then I should be good. There you go. As you can see, very saturated photo. Don't think I like that very much. So next I usually go into clarity. I bring it up just a little bit. If I zoom in, you can tell I took it at 400 ISO, so it's going to be a little grainy. Little bit of grain, but I like the clarity, and I can denoise it later, so no problems with that. Go back to the original photo. You just click down there to zoom in and zoom out. Next, I will usually bring the vibrance up a little bit. I don't know why. It's just slightly different than saturation. It brings the light out a little bit more in some of the colors. Next, I'm going to bring the saturation. I usually toss this way down until it begins to lose a lot of this color, and we'll go futz with it a little bit later. Next is tone curve, very important to any photo. Lots of people like to do the little fade. If you want to do the fade, literally you just bring this bottom part up, and the more you do it, the more it fades it. So this is going to fade the shadows. And I personally am not a big fan because it takes the sharpness down, so if I'm going to print this photo, it doesn't look as good. Usually you do a slight S-curve, but we already messed with the highlights, so if I bring this up, it's going to bring the highlights a little bit too much. So maybe I'll bring it back to the normal spot it was at before. I usually like to drop the blacks down a little bit just for a little bit more contrast. So now I got this really dark wood here. I really like that. Next, we're going to go into, usually I don't mess with the hue very much unless it's very off in the photo. When it comes to taking pictures of green stuff, oftentimes I'll put the yellow. Since there's a lot of yellows, I can do yellows a little bit more green, but then I usually like to do the greens a little bit more yellow just to get that warmer feel. That's kind of been a style more these days. Next, if you're going to take a portrait photo, you want to bring the oranges back up because that's where the skin tones usually reside, them and the yellows. So if I do that, if I bring those two back up, it gives a little bit more of a realistic feel here. It feels like the skin is realistic and not just more towards the black and white and too desaturated. So basically, with color, I like to desaturate the total photo and then saturate again the oranges and yellows to kind of offset that in a way. I'll bring the greens up a little bit too because those sort of fell off. You can mess with the blues. For example, this one had a lot of blues from the blue sky peeking in. I personally am not a big fan of blue. I'll pull it up just a little bit because I see some in the light right here. Next is luminance. Luminance depends on each photo entirely as well. If you have a very even photo, for example, this one is not even. Lots of shadows, lots of light areas peeking through because I'm in the trees. I think I'm just going to mess around with it a little bit. I tend to like it a little bit up in some photos, in some parts. For example, here, this is in the shadows, so I'll bring it down just a little bit. Her coat tends to be on the orange side. Bring the yellows up since those are kind of highlight areas. Greens, I mean, I think I can leave them at normal. Blues, some peeking through. Ooh, I can bring the blues up and really kind of wash the photo out up here and really make the lens flare and sun peeking through and everything. Here's another area that a lot of photographers develop their own style, split toning. So in split toning, this basically will tint your highlights and shadows a little bit, so that the highlights will be one color, shadows will be another. My general rule for this is if you're going to do one warm, the other has to be cold. If you're going to do one cold, the other has to be warm. And that makes sure that you're going to have a very balanced photo in the end. So if I bring, say I bring the highlights up and make them super warm, I actually kind of like that. Then I'm going to, you can change the saturation here. If you click this, you'll be able to use the eyedropper tool to do a little bit more exact and kind of mess around with it more. Shadows, I can go here. And so if I went warm in the highlights, I tend to go cold in the shadows. See, now there's a lot more shadows in this photo, obviously. So I'm probably going to err on the less saturated part of the photo. That's a little too green in my opinion. I'll probably go a little bit bluer. Maybe that's about right. And so then here I can kind of bring the saturation down. If I don't like that, I can check this and see if I like the before and after. I kind of like the after. I do like the orange up here. It kind of cancels out that blue that I wasn't liking before. And then this is just a slider based on, brings it more towards the shadows over here, the highlights over here. And so I kind of like a warmer photo, but that's very warm. I might bring it a little bit more towards the blue. So that's looking really nicely. Maybe a little bit more vibrant or more towards one color than you guys would want, but that's all kind of up to you. This is just how I'm doing it. ISO is at 400 when I took the photo, so I tend to bring the noise reduction up. You can just, zoom in a little bit. Looks like I'm gonna have to wait for it to load. There we go. And you kind of just go until grain starts to go away. So right there, it's starting to go away. Oh, it just loaded up, and maybe that's a little bit too much noise canceling, because then it tends to blur the image and look like it's a little bit out of focus, and that's not what we want at all. So I think that's good. This is looking really nicely. And then down here, enable profile corrections. That's just so if it recognizes that your camera is taking at, say, a fisheye lens or super zoom or whatever, it'll basically make it so that it's more like your eye. So if you're trying to get that effect, where you're having a fisheye lens, you probably don't want to enable profile corrections. But for me, I'm just going to do it because, I want this photo to look as normal as possible. And then I just remove chromatic aberration. To be completely honest, I have no idea what that does. But, yeah, we're just going to do it. Then go down here. Don't think I need to crop anything. So here we go. This is looks like the final photo here. I'm just going to scroll down. So if any of you want to copy these settings here, you're more than welcome to. That was just basically a short tutorial on what to do with each one based on your photo. And I'll probably do another one on a different one. You can pause the video at any point if you want to see these settings here on my right side. I'm just going to continue scrolling kind of up and down so you guys can see that. But anyways, thanks for watching, and yeah, leave a like if you want to see more. Peace out.